So I'm Tibor Horváth. I'm working for NRCS at the East National Technology Support Center as an agronomist, and I also participate in CIG proposals review. So I'm a reviewer. Typically, I'm going after nutrient management and mineral management, CIG, and helping in the review process. So what I'm going to do is going through some successful previous CIG grants and focusing on nutrient management and mineral management practices. The very first one I would like to bring up is actually an ongoing CIG project, and we don't have the final report yet, but we have very good data already, preliminary data, and I want to bring it up. This is the high clearance robotic irrigation system used for in-season nutrient management applications, applying fertilizer or liquid manure, especially to corn when the corn is already 6 to 10 feet tall, and it's very difficult to apply any other way of fertilizer or manure application. This side looks like the high clearance robotic system has a big boom on both sides. It comes in different sizes. On this one, we have 10 drop hoses. Let's turn on my pointer. So you can see on the left picture that you can see the hose is dragged, and it's right next to the corn plant. So it's applying that liquid fertilizer solution or the animal liquid manure at times when it will be very difficult to apply nutrients to that corn when it's this tall. And the reason why we're very excited about this technology is because high is the seasonal nitrogen uptake of the corn plant is on this graph. So if you're a regular farm, livestock farm, dairy, or swine operation with liquid manure or with solid manure, and they try to apply manure for that corn, for the nitrogen need of that crop, they would have not much chance but to apply all that manure before corn planting. But what happens if I do that manure before corn planting, and then it's going to be around 60 to 80 days pass when the corn plant is really looking for that nitrogen heavily. That's a high nitrogen demand period. But knowing the nitrogen, how mobile it is, it's here today, gone tomorrow. During the 60, 70, or 80 days, you would have lots of nitrogen volatilization, denitrification, leaching, runoff, you name it. So probably half of that nitrogen will be lost. That's why we see a huge opportunity on this technology, especially for corn growers who have liquid manure or just applying fertilizer later in the season with this high robotic clearance robotic irrigation system. We have some pictures from the demonstration project when they were applying dye into the irrigation water to demonstrate how the liquid would come, apply right next to the corn plant and see how far it would run, and the infiltration diagram would see how deep it would infiltrate to the soil. And also they had a frank tank brought to the site, so you can actually bring liquid manure pumped into this frank tank. You can carry it quite a few miles away to the cornfield and then pump it to the robotic irrigation system and apply that liquid manure on later in the season when the corn really need that nitrogen. So that's very beneficial for economics and for the environment, because when you apply that nitrogen in fertilizer or manure form, when the corn is really looking for it, so you have a lot less losses for leaching and runoff and volatilization. So you have a lot higher nutrient utilization of that nutrient, and less would be lost for the groundwater, surface water, or for the air. Looking at the preliminary data, so look at the 100 to 150 pounds per acre nitrogen application rate. That's where we would see the most economic return. If you see the blue line would showing you the, the spring application, a fall application of the liquid manure fertilizer. So it shows you that in the 150 pounds nitrogen application rate, you could reach to 75–80% of the maximum yield. But when you do a spring application, actually you could have 85–90% of the maximum yield. But the most benefits we get if you do side dressing later in the season, when the corn is up to like V12 to tasseling, when it's really sucking up that nitrogen, then we can have to 95% of the maximum yield reached with this irrigation system. Another big benefit for the dairy producers so they can apply this liquid manure late in the season, like in July. And what they find in the fall, the manure storage is half full. And that's a great advantage for the farmers, so they can expand their livestock numbers because the storage capacity is increased because they can apply late in the season. Look at some yield data when they're applying spring application with UAN fertilizer and spring minor application, spring minor injection, and then it's the side dressing of the minor application later in the season. So you could have 200 bushel corn. Imagine in this case, they did not apply any commercial fertilizer. I mean, that's a treasure for a livestock farmer. If they don't have to purchase any commercial fertilizer with the high prices, they can use their minor nitrogen fully for the corn crop, and that's very beneficial for the economics of the farm and also for the environment because they apply it on the right time, so you would have a lot less losses to the environment. So that's very beneficial, and we're waiting for the final report on this project. Let's move on to the second project I would like to highlight, and this is the Cornell University Phosphorus Index. At NRCS, we see that every state have their phosphorus index. That's a phosphorus risk assessment tool for minor applications. And unfortunately, they very specific to the state, and sometimes neighboring states has a very different P index rate. I can tell you I've worked in 7 different states in this nutrient management scenario. So I'm very happy to see this first science-based regional phosphorus index. That's what we would like to see more developed in the US. So right now we have 6 states utilizing this phosphorus index developed by Cornell University. So every phosphorus index has 2 components, the transport factor and the source factor. The source factor is the soil test phosphorus level and the amount of phosphorus applied in minor or fertilizer form. And the transport factor is how much risk you have on that field for the phosphorus to move with runoff or with sediment runoff or with leaching into the groundwater. So looking at the transport score, in this system, they give credit for best management practices to mitigate the risk with application method and ground cover and the right timing of the minor application. Then they come up with the P-index score, which is the risk. Look at the soil test, then they make the management decision based on in this table. So for example, if you have a field with a high risk, a high soil test phosphorus level, like over 160 on the Cornell-Morgan P-test, and even if you have a low risk category for transport factor, you're still not allowed to apply any phosphorus, no minor or fertilizer. Another example, if you have a medium risk for transporting the phosphorus of the field, but you have a low soil test phosphorus level, they allow you to apply nitrogen-based minor application. So you're still allowed to over-apply the phosphorus until your soil test phosphorus will reach over 40 pounds per acre. Then you go back to the phosphorus-based minor application, so you would have to additionally apply nitrogen fertilizer for that plant or forage. So it's really science-based. You can see here we have a dissolved phosphorus, transport factors, and the particulate phosphorus. That would be the soil erosion and the phosphorus leaving with soil particles. And here is the definition, the equation. And so here the flow distance to water body, it gives you the score based on how close you are to a water body, how far is that flow distance, actual flow distance from the water runs off from that field. Look at your vegetative area. If you have a filter strip, that gives you positive score, lowering your risk. Look at the flooding frequency of the field. More frequently flooded field would have a higher risk, higher transport factor. Also look at the soil hydrology group, so that D groups with which the highest and the runoff factor would have the highest transport score. Look at the erosion rates. Of course, we have more soil erosion, means more runoff, and more sediment-bound phosphorus can leave. And also very important to look at the concentrated flows. These are great contributors for phosphorus leaving a farm field after minor application. And the BMPs, the best management practices, you can give credit for it, like based on how far you are. If you surface apply or you inject that minor, it gives you lower or higher risk category. And with implementing these BMPs, you can change your phosphorus index. So you can actually go back to apply nitrogen-based minor application if you implement these BMPs based on the scientific equation. So I'm very happy about this, and I hope that we're going to see more similar regional phosphorus indices developed in the US. Like the Southeast would be a very good candidate for that, I can tell you from experience. We'd like to move on to my third project. This is the portable separation project submitted by Native Energy. Right now they're called Native. It's a public benefit corporation, and this was finished in 2023. reason I picked it because this is very important for the Lake Champlain watershed. So this watershed had actually many small dairies, and they're there for a long time. So they have a history of applying manure to the same field over and over. So they have an issue with the soil test phosphorus buildup. So the purpose is try to get this phosphorus out of this watershed from this manure shed. So benefits would be greenhouse gas emission reduction in phosphorus loading to that watershed, that to export somehow that phosphorus out of the watershed, and the financial benefits. So with our very small dairies, so they cannot afford a manure separator. These are very expensive pumps or separators. So they have this portable manure separator, which comes on a roll of trailer, like a roll of, can be transported in a truck from farm to farm. So they're gonna have the manure storage on the dairy, pump it to the manure separator. If you produce solid manure, that could be used as bedding, recycled to the dairy as a bedding material. But very important to see that the liquid portion of this manure will carry most of the nitrogen. That's what the farm would like to keep on the farm. And let's get rid of that phosphorus. So they can keep the liquid as a nitrogen, they can apply to their forage crop and utilize the solid as bedding or put into a holding bin. And when they receive the portable pyrolysis unit, they can create heat and generate a biochar, which would be exported out from the farm, from the watershed. So that biochar will carry like 90% of the phosphorus. And that's the key. We don't want that phosphorus on the farm. They already have too much in their soils. Here's the pyrolysis unit brought to the farm, and then when they finished, empty that storage bin, then they're going to move on to the next dairy to empty their storage and create this biochar and use that technology to get rid of that phosphorus. Moving on, number 4 project. This is the Sustainable Conservation from California, Central Valley of California. So I can talk about this because I did work in Fresno. I was a CNMP planner for 3 years working with these dairies. What you see here is the groundwater nitrate levels in the San Joaquin Valley. The red one exceeds the 10 ppm. That's the EPA drinking water standard. So most of the groundwater wells, red means it's not potable water anymore. The reason is because so many dairies, we have 1,500 large key-food dairies in this Central Valley of California, and they produce so much nutrients, they have an extra amount of nitrogen especially, and therefore create this nitrogen leaching and polluting the groundwater. So the idea is that they are using this liquid manure subsurface drip irrigation system on the farms, and they're gonna export this liquid manure to the neighboring almond orchards. What they found that they have a lot of almond orchards in the Central Valley, and they're not far actually from these large dairies. So for example, in Fresno County, they found 119,000 acres of almond orchards, less than 5 miles distance from the dairies. And the biggest was Stanislaus County, 158,000 acres. That's a great opportunity to actually export this extra nitrogen from these dairies and help lessen this groundwater nitrate contamination. So I had to show this report. I was actually there in California in 2012, the Thomas Harter report from UC Davis. So they had a 5-year project to evaluate all the nitrogen inputs in the Central Valley of California on 3.1 billion acres, including alfalfa, that's a legume. So they found that they had a total of 381 pounds of nitrogen applied on the whole valley per acre per year, 204 as a fertilizer and 127 pounds as dairy manure. On the right side, we see how much was actually utilized by the crop. It's only 130 pounds. So you have a 1.9 application to 1 utilization. It's a horrible loss. 195 pounds loss to leaching. So that's why we need to have this technology so we can export out the extra nutrient from the dairy to the neighboring almond orchards. To try to figure out if it is viable at the subsurface drip irrigation, to modify it for the almond orchards, to export this liquid manure and apply it to the almond crops. Have to look at food safety risk because almond is for human consumption, and they're going to evaluate the treatments needed for successfully exporting, pumping the liquid manure without plugging the subsurface irrigation system. Look at the cost analysis at object number 4, and then lastly, they're going to do education and outreach. So they're going to conduct more of these meetings for dairies and almond orchards to convince them about this technology to help the Central Valley addressing this nitrate pollution problem. Here's an existing system on a large dairy. Here are the tanks and the filtration system. And actually, you can see here in the trench, the subsurface irrigation system and two neighboring corn silage would be going down and getting the nitrogen up this drip irrigation system. So when they export this to the almond orchards, and that would be great because then almond orchards don't have to purchase the commercial fertilizer, which is not cheap. And they can get this nitrogen, liquid nitrogen from the dairy. Actually, it's organic and it's very beneficial for the almond. They see a healthy crop growth on these farms. They implemented this technology. So hopefully the outcome will be that they're going to see improvement in groundwater quality on these farms. So they have monitoring wells. After a 5-year project, they're going to applying less and less nitrogen on these dairies with this system and more nitrogen exported to almond. They should see a reduction in the groundwater nitrate levels. So it's very, very potentially very beneficial. I think with that, let's move on to the next project. And that would be the grantee is the Maryland Department of Agriculture. It's adopting innovative technologies to mitigate phosphorus from dairy effluent. Again, the problem the same. Dairies applying their manure for the crop nitrogen need and over-applying phosphorus. So what can be done? So this project objective is to help these 417 dairies in Maryland. They are in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and they do have an EPA-mandated TMDL, total maximum daily load of phosphorus. So that's a lot more stringent applying manure than phosphorus base sometimes. So they developed this phosphorus management tool to help these dairies lowering their phosphorus application rate and try this technology to separate the liquids and the solids so they can have the nitrogen kept on the farm. That's what the dairies need, and try to get that phosphorus portion with the solid manure exported out of the farm, out of the watershed, actually. Here's the concept. So you have the liquid manure storage tank. They're going to apply iron coagulant, and then going to pump it with this rotary lobe pump into a flocculator. So that basically the phosphorus would be flocculated as a solid, suspended solid in the flocculator. Then it would be pumped into a geotube to filter out the liquid and hang on to the phosphorus, which is in solid form in the geotube. And the liquid would go into a tank, storage tank, that would be pumped for an irrigation system for the forage crop. You can see here the pipeline. So the pipe coming from the flocculator, here is the geotube when it's empty, and they're going to pump these suspended solids into the geotube. And the right side, you can see actually here the liquid coming out from the geotube. So that's carrying about 85% of the nitrogen. That's what the dairies would like to keep. And the solids stay in the geotube. When it's filled up, they're going to cut it open, and they're going to get the solids either composted, dried, and they would be transported out from the watershed. It's very hard to transport liquid manure, but when it becomes dry, it's a solid, it's a lot easier to transport, maybe composted and marketed this way. And this is the way to get that phosphorus out of these dairies. Here is the existing storage tank. So that goes into the flocculator. They pump it to the geotube area, and the liquid will be pumped back to the storage tank, and this will be irrigated for the forage crop in the next season. It's very beneficial. I like this project also. I was not a reviewer, but I read into it. With that, I move on to the last project I've picked. Is the grantee is Nutrient Company, and this is the compost aeration, positive and negative forced air to speed up the composting process. So it's very beneficial because the composting process needs the right air movement to the compost pile, and it's very hard to make it on a static pile. Here is the diagram. So you have a composting facility, and what they do is they put in perforated pipes under the compost pile, and they either pump air into the compost pile, so the oxygen coming through the compost, it will be firing up these bacterial activities to break down the organic material, heat up the compost pile, kill the pathogens, and reduce the volume. And they can capture the gas coming off the compost pile and recirculate it through a condensed tank. Then it's Of course, it's very hot. The compost pile runs 140, 160 Fahrenheit, so they're going to have this hot air utilized to the heat exchanger to generate hot water for the facility or heat facility. So they use this heat from the compost pile, don't get it lost to the environment. And it's very beneficial because the vapor would be sent to a biofilter, so you had less odor problems and also less greenhouse gas emissions. It could be either forced air or negative air. This way that would be backwards. It would suck the air from the facility and back into the pump and get the hot air into the process water, hot water heater. So that's the advantage. It speeds up the process. It helps with the storage period, less time spent in the composting facility, very effective in killing the pathogens. Here are the matrix. So the nitrogen recovery is not on the positive side because you have better heat, better air movement that generates more nitrogen volatilization. But everything else is positive. Phosphorus recovery is on the positive side. Storage reduction, you're going to reduce the storage volume a lot by composting this raw manure. Reduce greenhouse gas emission using the biofilter technology. Less odor, of course, and the biggest benefit is the pathogen reduction with the high heat and quick heat up process. Actually, right now with the avian influenza problems, I mean, that's very beneficial. You can have this more effective composting process. Nutrient is very effective. This company actually reviewing other innovative nutrient management technologies. Right now, they have 15 reviews going on in cooperation with universities. What I wanted to mention is the N2O applied. So that's the idea is that when you apply manure, you always over-apply phosphorus when you apply manure based on the nitrogen need of the crop. But if they can pump nitrogen oxide from the atmospheric nitrogen, they capture that nitrogen and pump it into the manure stream. They can generate the manure which would have matching of nitrogen and phosphorus content what the crop needs. So that would be excellent for the benefit for the environment and for the economics. Last thing I wanted to mention, they're analyzing this Aqua Innovations company's ultrafiltration technology and using the reverse osmosis. You can see a raw liquid manure, then they're going to do an ultrafiltration process, create a concentrate, and then going with the reverse osmosis, and that could create a low phosphorus, high nitrogen filtrate, and the other one is with the high phosphorus, low nitrate concentrate. So basically, they could separate the nitrogen of the liquid manure and use it on the farm and try to export the phosphorus to other farms where they would have a low soil test phosphorus level. This technology is so effective that could actually create potable water with this ultrafiltration technology that can filter out all the suspended solids and even the dissolved solids. I think with that, I finished my presentation.